Don't underestimate the adrenaline that runs through you when you go embark on that journey. Don't underestimate how much work has to be done before you start that process. And don't underestimate the 18 hours a day for 3 months, 7 days a week that you have to do to get it over the line. Now, I realized very early on in the interactions with these people, first thing, I knew 100 times more than they did.
This podcast is sponsored by Pragmatic Solutions, the player account management platform chosen by today's smart betting and gaming operators. Don't let technical constraints delay you from achieving your business goals. Expand your business, boost your margins, and dominate the market in any leading regulated jurisdiction with our powerful, flexible, and secure iGaming platform. Enjoy its extensive marketing tools, compliance protection, real-time data, and a wide portfolio of over 1,000 industry providers. It's time to upgrade your technology. Let Pragmatic Solutions show you the modern approach. Visit pragmatic.solutions and join the smart thinkers.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
Bingo Bang Bongo, David Carruthers, all the way from Asia. You made your way over here. How is it going, David?
I'm wonderful, thank you. I just got in the other day from Barcelona.
Yes, there was a little detour there, a small event that happened this week.
Yeah, it was bigger than I expected, and it was better than London.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we did a poll that asked that question: which city do you prefer for ICE, Barcelona or London? I think like 95% voted Barcelona.
Yeah, the communication or the travel to the event was smooth. The event was pristine. My hotel was wonderful. I stayed at El Palace, which is kind of old school, a little bit like the Savoy in London.
Yeah,
and it fits with an old guy like me. You know, I could sit there and drink tea. And I arrived on Friday morning. I had 38 meetings between Friday and when I left around 4 p.m. on the Wednesday.
Yeah. Although you did say that you made your way to Swedish House Mafia about their sponsors here, Pragmatic, so there was a little bit of the opposite end of the spectrum too, I believe.
Well, you have to try and experience everything, but I didn't go willingly, but I had to go. I didn't want to be rude. The people I had dinner with had a VIP area for the event, right, and they took me along, and it was different. I don't know the name of the performer, but I believe he's very famous.
Yes.
And he left a positive impression upon me. I got some bruises on my chest from the music. You know, boom, 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 boom. Yes. But no, seriously, it was actually very good. It was a different end of the continuum, but it made me think about who I had experienced live music before in my life, and I've been very lucky. I've listened to Pavarotti, and I was in row 2 in the soccer stadium in San Jose, Costa Rica, 20 years ago, and that man was special.
Wow.
Very special.
Yeah.
And Andrea Bocelli, same place, very special. But I do like other music as well. You know, I like everything, actually.
Right. So, David, you are an absolute legend, and we are standing on the shoulders of giants like yourselves as an industry today because of the pioneering work that you and others did at the beginning, very infancy of the iGaming industry. The gambling industry has been your mistress for your entire life, you could say.
Absolutely. I mean, I started in this industry at the tender age of 18 and a half. And I started with an introduction that is quite unusual. I had been in college, and I had an art college, and I dropped out art college, and I was staying at home. I didn't have a job. My parents were very modest. They were very poor, to be truthful. And one day my father came home from work, and he said, David, he said, there's a job for you in the local betting shop in Ladbrokes. Go tomorrow and accept the job. And I thought, oh my God, I got thrown out of there 2 years ago, underage gambling at age 16. I was embarrassed. I was scared to go. So I didn't go. Next night, comes home, he says, did you get the job? I said, the manager was out. He says, you go tomorrow and you get the job or you find somewhere to live.
Oh, wow.
So I went the next day. I'm in and out, nervous to ask. Somebody comes and said, do you want this job? I said, yeah. And within 18 months, I was the manager of that store.
Oh, yes.
And my career was just...
And that's where it began.
24 years with Ladbrokes,
yes,
under Cyril Stein.
Yeah. And so you started by managing one of the betting shops, and then this quickly grew to managing more than one.
I actually started less than managing the betting shop. I was the kid that wrote the winning horses on the whiteboard and wrote the numbers on the whiteboard. But I progressed. Look, back in the day, Ladbrokes was an amazing company. It invested in its people. And it was growing all the time. So if you were energetic and you were enthusiastic and you worked hard, you progressed quickly. You know, I think I ended up running 300 and something stores at one point. You know, but there was lots of ins and out and differences. I started in Scotland, I moved to central London, I ran all the big stores in central London, I met some huge customers that were betting millions of pounds a year in cash across the counter, you know, from the Middle East, etc. But it was my foundation of being a leader and a manager. I did an MBA when I was with Ladbrokes, for example. And many of my colleagues and my peers back in Ladbrokes are now senior people in the industry across the globe.
Yeah.
You know.
And so 18-year-old David Carruthers walks into Ladbrokes for the first time, accepts the job in the betting shop, which then leads to a life that leads into becoming a pioneering industry leader in the online gambling industry, founding and building what would eventually become a listed betting operator, generating millions and millions of pounds, then leading into part of your life in prison, then restarting that life, and you are here today. Could you ever have imagined when you walked into that betting shop that this story would eventually unfold?
With the exception of the prison, yes, to be truthful, because I always had ambition. I always wanted to lead and be in the front of anything and everything. I didn't quite get to the boardroom in Ladbrokes. There was a glass ceiling. I think, on reflection, my personality prevented me from going through that glass ceiling because I always spoke how I saw things. And sometimes that's not acceptable to certain people. So I'll give you an example. We're at the annual conference. The board are announcing a new initiative, personal development plans for every executive in the business, ability and opportunity to go and take learning outside the company and come back in and perform stronger. And it was all going to be managed on the internet. And it was great. I was excited. In fact, that initiative allowed me to go and do my MBA. But at that event, I recall I put up my hand and asked a question. And I said, look, this is a wonderful initiative. I'm going to participate. I'm excited. But can you please tell me why area managers can't have a laptop? Okay, I was a bit naive. but that aggression gave me energy, gave me success, but it also inhibited my progress at times. So after I did the MBA to give myself a passport to escape. Yeah. And I escaped. Mm-hmm. But even my escape was different, because I didn't go and apply for a CEO job. I saw an opportunity that struck my interest, and I applied for the opportunity. And I got the CEO job, but that wasn't the opportunity that I started exploring. I saw an advertisement in the Racing Post that said, wanted customer service manager, Costa Rica. Now, I didn't know where Costa Rica was at that point. And I got to the point one day I was coming home early because I was bored. And I tried to change my mood before the kids came home from school and I could have a nice evening. So I decided I need to clean my car. So I opened the trunk and the newspaper that has the advert was there, right in front of me. I went in and I faxed, faxed my CV for the advertisement. 3.5 months later, I was the CEO of BetonSports.
So this drive that eventually led you to the career that you've had so far, where does that come from, do you think? Because I don't think it's necessarily that you slipped through this career. Like, there has to have been something there that made you go on this path.
I mean, the roots are one, being Scottish. Okay? We have to fight. We're taught to fight as children. Either fight emotionally or even physically, because you're Scottish. Because the English took us over 500 years ago, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I will watch a sporting event and England can be playing tennis, cricket, volleyball, soccer, chess. I will support the other side. Now, Andy Murray said that a few years back, got into trouble for saying it. So, but I don't have Andy Murray's profile. But so that indigenous Scottish spirit. Okay. But the other thing for me personally was I discovered later on in life that I'm actually dyslexic. So when I was in high school, I was bullied for being stupid. Trust me, I am far from stupid. But that gave me the tenacity. You know, I recall I fought the one guy 5 nights in a row and lost 5 times. But what did I learn? I learned not to fight. I never fought anyone else again, ever, ever in my life, you know? So it's like, show me a hill, I'll walk up it. Show me a mountain, I will climb it. And I will learn from the experience, and the next mountain is bigger, more exciting, different, etc.
Yeah.
That's how I would explain my career or life.
Yeah.
Mountains, climbing.
Sometimes these experiences of being bullied, especially in your case for being stupid or being put in that box, you know, at that time maybe dyslexia and other of these kind of like letter combinations would be seen as just being a little bit behind. But actually these days we are understanding that dyslexia and others are perhaps give you a more creative outlet, and actually having some of these what would be seen as disabilities before is proven now that those people end up being more successful in some domains in business and so on.
Yeah, indeed. You develop compensatory skills.
Yeah.
So go back to the Ladbrokes days, all of the training that we got. I was terrified to write on the board. You know, you always had to do, you know, brainstorm lists on the board. I would never take the pens. I would always be directing the person with the pen to write on the board whatever it is that needed to be written. I have got communication skill that people have always complimented me for. And that's why I have it. I had to do it like that. When I went from Edinburgh to London in 1982, I had to learn to speak like this. Because if I said canny, dinny, winny, you wouldn't understand a word I'm saying. And in 1982, in central London, in my office, the staff in the beginning couldn't understand me. I had to transform myself. So that's part of the dyslexia journey. And at that stage, I had no idea what dyslexia was.
No, it wasn't really spoken about.
No, absolutely, yeah. Now I know Richard Branson's dyslexic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps also the bullying itself, oftentimes it would perhaps generate a sense of needing to prove people wrong. Do you think that was part of it too? So like, you know, your journey is a lot about, let's say, doing something that others haven't done before. You know, you're pioneering industries and doing things and learning along the way kind of thing. There has to be a drive there somewhere also to just explore the unknown, I would imagine.
Proving people wrong can be euphoric.
Yes.
But you sometimes have to temper the euphoria. Okay, it depends on what you prove them wrong to be. You have to learn to be sensitive about it. It's more about, for me nowadays, it's proving to myself what I can do or what I can't do.
Yeah.
And that's why at this tender age of 67, I'm still flying around the world. I'm still holding 38 meetings in 4 days and things like that.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
It's because I want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do it and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, brilliant. So, David, I'm curious also, you were at the front lines at those betting shops, meeting with gamblers every single day coming into the industry. And I feel sometimes in our industry and the online side of things, we can be a bit detached from the actual customers. Not that many people in our industry are actually interacting with the customer. Was there anything that you learned about just being in touch with the actual gamblers themselves during that time? What impression did that have on you? What did you learn from them?
Many different things at different times and different stages. You start with communicating and becoming friends. So the regular customer that comes into your store in the morning, the old age pensioner that shares with you how much he lost, how much he won yesterday, what he thinks of the government, etc., etc. And then to the situation where maybe you had to deal with a dispute between the customer's view of the payment of his winnings or non-payment of his winnings. So then you needed to learn to instantly negotiate and sweet talk and try and take the adrenaline down and blah blah blah, and then now beyond that there are just incidents that stay in your brain that are crazy. I mean, I was held up at gunpoint.
Oh wow!
In John Adams Street.
Oh no way!
With one cashier.
Oh Jesus!
And that's in central London, by the way.
Wow.
And it's simple. You just give them the money.
Yeah.
And pray that they go away, and they went away. You know. Another time, I'm in a less salubrious part of Edinburgh. It's called Granton, the West Granton Road, and as a gentleman comes into the store in the morning. And we were talking about being Scottish earlier, right? His name was Jimmy, and Jimmy comes into the store, and he's wearing Levi's, he's wearing Doc Marten boots, he has a white T-shirt, he has a tartan scarf, he has a plastic bag with some beer, and over his shoulder he has an air rifle. Now it's not a proper gun; it's the little pellets, okay. Yeah. So I said, Tommy, I said, are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay. I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Wembley, going to the match. Scotland versus England.
Oh, wow.
So you go to Scotland-England match with a scarf, jeans, boots, a rifle.
So you experienced the whole spectrum.
The whole continuum of everything. I mean, I've met politicians and I've met people that have done charity. I got an English soccer player who was at Icon, Jimmy Greaves, to open a store in Euston Road one time. And I met him about half a mile away, and we're walking down the street. It took me 45 minutes to go half a mile, because everybody keeps stopping him and asking for his autograph. He was that famous.
So you run the betting shops for Ladbrokes for many, many years. This expands into, I believe, a couple of hundred betting shops that you then manage under David Carruthers. And then you then take this decision that you want to relocate to Costa Rica, move into the online gambling industry. Talk a little bit more. You mentioned how you saw that adverts. Talk a little bit more about how you then became the CEO for BetonSports.
Actually, it was very simple. It was just an interview process, but it was a different type of interview process. I faxed my CV. I'm sitting 4 days later in my office, and I'm in the evening because I'm on regional duty, so I have to approve large winners in the evening if they take place. And my phone goes. And there's this lady, an American lady, New York accent. Her name is Ellen Zindler, and she was a lawyer. And she says, cut it short, Mr. Kaplan would like to invite you to Costa Rica to discuss terms. I said, pardon? Mr. Kaplan would like to invite you to Costa Rica to discuss terms. I said, well, let me check my diary, as I was thinking for time. And I said, maybe I can come in a couple of weeks' time. No, Mr. Kaplan would like to see you this weekend. Now, I think this was Tuesday evening or, at the time. I said, can you call me back in 20 minutes? I need to make a call. Yeah, sure. So I called my wife and I said, would you like to go to Costa Rica this weekend? She said, yeah. No, seriously. I mean, I was quite surprised. I was expecting 10 questions. She just said, yeah, okay, no problem. And you know, the Thursday morning, I'm up at 4 a.m. driving to Gatwick to get on a flight to Dallas to go to Costa Rica. I go to Costa Rica and I spend 4 days in Costa Rica, and I'm interviewed for probably about 5 hours in this gentleman's office with him, with my wife sitting next to me. It was kind of bizarre.
Yeah. And this is like 2000?
2000.
The year 2000.
The year 2000.
Yeah.
The year 2000.
So this is in the very infancy of online gambling. Have you ever even interacted with online gambling before that point?
Well, I knew it existed. I was frustrated that Ladbrokes were slow and didn't show any excessive interest at that stage. I was part-time teaching on the MBA program at Wolverhampton as well as working for Ladbrokes at that point. So I was aware of what was going on in the world. And part of that interview process, the first part was a tour of the operation. And it was quiet because it was early in the morning, but I just knew, I saw the opportunity. I saw all of these customer service posts. I saw the local people answering the phone calls, because the business at that time was like 40-60, 40 online, 60 telephone, and there was multiple brands in the organization, different sections. There was the technical internet section as well, and what have you. And it was like just walking through the place gave me confidence. It gave me confidence that I could make a difference. I could bring professionalism. I could bring my skills to this, and I know I could make a difference. So that's why I felt good. And then I had the 5 hours interrogation. Who are you, what you do, how you do it, what happens at this and everything. I was just extracting every piece of possible information about the gaming environment that I'd ever experienced. And I was very clever on his part, very clever. And he said, at the end of that 5 hours, he says, we'll take you for a little tour of San Jose and then back to your hotel, and we'll go to dinner. I said, fine, no problem. So we go tour of San Jose, and it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's a lot of ugly.
Yes.
And we go back to the hotel, and I say to my wife, Carol, I say, there's no way we can bring our children here. I think this is also an opportunity that we will never see again. It's humongous, but we cannot bring the children here. So let's just go to dinner and enjoy dinner and say we've been to Costa Rica for the weekend. And she said, okay. So we go to dinner. When we go to dinner, we get picked up and we get taken up a mountain all the way to the top. Now, the venue on that mountain is and I think it's still there now, it's called Le Monastère restaurant. Used to be a monastery. And it should be closed. I didn't know that either, but it was open. And we were the only people in the restaurant apart from the bodyguards. So there was Gary and his wife Holly, me and my wife. And we had a 3-hour dinner with lovely wine and conversation, and we spoke about families and children and cooking, and we did not talk once about the industry or business. Get back to my hotel, maybe it's 1 a.m, and I say to my wife again, before we retire for the evening, you know what, remember I told you this is the best and biggest opportunity that we'll ever see. I said, how about I do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Basically do a bit commuting and then you join me later, blah, blah, blah. And she said, okay, if that's what you want to do, I'll support you. So the next morning on the way back to the airport, we drop in to see Mr. Kaplan, and he's all smiles, and I say, I would like to take you up on your opportunity. I think it's a marvelous opportunity. I think I can add value to your business. I like your vision to take this company public. And however, I can only do it on these terms because of my personal circumstances and support for my children's education and them growing up properly. And he said, okay, I don't think that's a problem. I said, but I'd like you to meet some other people in London before I make a decision. I said, okay. I flew back to England, and then I had more traditional selection interviews with the lawyers and the bankers and the accountants that he had hired to take the business on this journey that I took it on. And they all did that. And I gave my notice, and by the end of July, I was in Costa Rica.
Right. So then you move over to Costa Rica. You now enter the online gambling industry. At that time, of course, a little bit of the Wild West, you could say, with operators finding their feet and understanding how to essentially attract and customers.
In many ways, it was no more Wild West than it is today. You know, in any business where there's opportunity, there's a variety of operators. Big, small, strong, weak, honest, dishonest. Costa Rica at that time was the same. We were probably more corporate than most of them, but others were also corporate, and they're still there, and they're still successful. And they may have, some of them may even have migrated away from the USA black market and are still successful. I didn't focus on them at all. I focused on BetonSports and what we needed to do. And what we needed to do initially was to begin to hire a team. And what we needed to do was deploy the marketing to secure our growth and continue the mission. And then fulfill all the requirements that the professionals, the accountants, and the lawyers required for you to qualify to approach the stock exchange and list the company.
Yeah. So the ambition here, as you point out, was to actually list the company public, and you talk about the ambition to become the Coca-Cola of iGaming.
Yeah, that was my vision. That was my sales point, because the handicap was that we were USA centric at the time. You know, over 80% of the business came from the USA. So, but that was also the opportunity, because if I can add Asia to the USA and Europe to the USA, then what am I? I am the Coca-Cola of online gaming. And that was the vision, and that was the vision that I sold to the market when I met the merchant banks in London and asked them to invest in the company.
So as you point out, 80% of traffic and revenues comes from the US. This is pre-Eureka, of course,
Yes.
Where the kind of big hammer of the US lawmakers came down on the industry. How did you think about the legalities and the question marks around operating from Costa Rica, attracting US traffic at the time? Were you internally thinking about potential repercussions at that time, or was that not really any consideration? Was it more about just attract as many players as you could?
It was always something that we thought about. We did not ignore it. But our assessment was a bit more progressive than the USA government's at that time, as it proved to be the case. We felt, and I felt quite strongly, that the precedent of the 1989 GATT agreement signature gave us a legal window to go into the US.
Can you talk more about that?
Well, basically, the incumbent president at that time signed a GATT agreement, a general trade agreement, that it gave Antigua access for entertainment services into the United States market. Under the World Trade Organization list of definition of entertainment services is gambling. So we stood behind that precedent and said this could be legal, but it wasn't legal because there was no precedent law, but you could argue that it was also not illegal. And that's why the markets embraced the business opportunity, because the growth and the success of the business, and that was the explanation that they stood by when we listed the company. Now, it's never been tested in a court of law. And the reason it's never been tested in a court of law is that the journey to test it is a bit scary. Because when they did arrest me, they charged me with RICO conspiracy. They did not charge me with betting without a permit. And the penalty for RICO conspiracy, one count, is a minimum of 20 years.
Wow.
And they charged me with 4 counts.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, RICO conspiracy is where you conspire with more than 2 other people to break the law.
That's a very wide statement.
It's a very wide statement. And just imagine, Pierre, you're facing not a prosecutor, you're facing the USA government.
Yeah. That's the...
And are you prepared to go to jail for 80 years to win in the Supreme Court, where there's no guarantee that you'll get to the Supreme Court, and there's no guarantee that your interpretation of the argument will stand up? I tried to get the case dismissed using that argument with the law team that we had. And the federal judge threw it out. And the reason she threw it out was that it was an executive order signed by the president and it was not debated on the floor of the House. Now, based on that and the love for my family, I decided to do a deal and get the best deal I could and plead guilty. Right. I'm not guilty of anything other than being successful. But I pled guilty, and I have a criminal conviction in the United States.
Yes. So, taking a step back again into your days at BetonSports. So, of course, the company grows; it becomes bigger. Eventually, you do get to that point where it's now time to list the company. And I know you've talked about that you managed to actually attract investment from some of the biggest investment banks in the world.
Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, etc. Yes.
All invested into BetonSports. And can you talk about your recollection of actually heading into those meetings, speaking to those institutional banks? You have this, new and exciting company that it does operate offshore. The risk appetite from these banks to actually take on that investment. How did you manage to convince them?
Well, I would like to say something first before I tell you how I managed to convince them. Don't underestimate the adrenaline that runs through you when you go embark on that journey. Don't underestimate how much work has to be done before you start that process. And don't underestimate the 18 hours a day for 3 months, 7 days a week that you have to do to get it over the line. Now, I realized very early on in the interactions with these people, first thing, I knew 100 times more than they did. So I didn't have to fear any of them. And I didn't show any fear. I didn't show any complacency either, but I showed confidence. And I spoke to them cleanly and securely and sharp about the industry and its opportunity, and I articulated my vision amazingly well. They loved me because I was telling them stories that they liked. And the opportunity for them was also significant. Remember, we floated in the July of 2004. I think the first valuation was around 580 million pounds.
Wow.
9 months later, Party Poker floated 6 billion pounds.
Oh.
Had we not been successful, I don't think Party Poker would have floated. And then the other stuff was just technique. Never sit down till they come into the room. Otherwise, they're looking down on you. Always sit with your back to the window if you have the opportunity. Always direct and lead the conversation. Answer the questions before they ask them. Simple.
Show that you know what you are doing. Show that you're leading from the front, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yes. They look for weakness. Yes. And your job is not to let them find it.
Yeah, but there's also a reality that you realize too, is that you have to be really stupid and useless for them not to invest in you. Because they've already promised to help a friend, or they're repaying a friend, or they've already made a decision.
Yeah.
I know, and you do understand that, you know. It's not just, David did everything. No, it's a circumstance. But you have to play your role, and you have to be good at it.
Yeah.
And I'm very good at it.
So you do get to a point then when you manage to carry these deals across the finish line. You get these institutional banks on your cap table. It's time to float the business publicly. Talk a bit more about the process to get the company public then.
Well, you go through legal due diligence beyond belief, you know, for a start. Every full stop, every comma, every word in that prospectus goes through legal due diligence. That's not a small process. And then you have this responsibility. Once you're listed, it's humongous. Okay, you might have a caveat and a limit to your personal financial exposure if you do something wrong or inappropriate, but it's significant. It's not small. Your fiduciary responsibilities are huge, and you cannot operate like some private business can operate with a lot more latitude. You know, I had a profit warning within 9 months that I had to deal with. You know, and that was part of the hereditary baggage from the previous owner. But we dealt with it, went to the market, built the confidence again, and then started to deliver. You know, and we delivered and recovered from that, and we were on the ascendance. I was expecting to deliver, I think, 46 million EBITDA in 2006 when I get arrested. Mm-hmm. When I floated, we did 23 EBITDA. The first year, 2000, we made $600,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So explosive growth, of course, in the organization year over year. Mm. So let's get to the interesting parts then. So you mentioned the arrest happens. Did that happen out of the blue? Did you have any sense that this could be a possibility? Because Eureka obviously had happened shortly before. The US had kind of gotten the industry in its crosshairs. How was that time before the arrest for you?
It's a good question, and you have to really think about it without the benefit of hindsight. So I will tell you that at that time, it was a surprise to me. I didn't expect it. And one of the reasons I didn't expect it is I didn't think that the Eureka was a pivotal point where they were going to come after me. We were already a public company. We've been a public company for nearly 2 years.
You thought that you were in the clear. You had already done the due diligence.
I thought they would go after the bad guys and not the good guys. And I thought, and I was right to think, but maybe ahead of the game, that they would legalize it anyway. And they have done. No, they haven't done federal regulation, but state by state, and it's many more states participating in gambling now than anyone expected, actually. So I was right in that context, but I was wrong in the context that there would be a political momentum for individuals that had power to do what they did to me to try and enhance their careers, and they did it. Catherine Hanaway, the prosecutor that prosecuted me, wanted to be a senator. Catherine Hanaway was the prosecutor for Missouri. Missouri had riverboat casinos. BetonSports were taking Missouri's customers and providing them a better, safer product. She tried to look good in front of her audience so she could move to the next step. Now, coincidentally, Barack Obama gets elected. She gets fired. She goes back into the law practice with her friend John Ashcroft, who's in Washington, and she's in Kansas City. And she writes a legal opinion for a poker company telling them that what they're doing is legal, and took money for it.
So she switched sides.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a criminal conviction. She doesn't have to fight to open a bank account. Mm. She's allowed to teach if she chooses to teach. I'm not.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, these are the... it's not just that you serve the time and now life continues. There's repercussions afterwards then as well. Yes.
I'm still serving time.
Yes.
The number of times people have asked me, why don't you ask for a pardon? And I say, are you serious? Why would they give me a pardon? I'm not an American citizen. I'm not living in America. And if I get a pardon, then I'm really actually saying I was guilty. Now, I know I said I was guilty. I had to plead guilty to get free. But I'm not guilty. Mm. I will never ask for a pardon. I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't steal 1 cent. I employed 3,500 people.
Well, that's how big the company was when the hammer came down.
When the hammer came down.
Wow. So again, just going back to the question, did you have that sense that it could happen? And can you then talk about a bit more when the actual arrest happened?
I was naively thinking it would not happen to me, which I'll be honest about. When it did happen, this sounds crazy, but it's true. The first thing that came through my mind was the share price and the shareholders.
Speaking as a true leader.
It's the truth. It's the truth. I mean, at that point, I had no idea that they were going to charge me with RICO conspiracy. It was a sealed indictment. You know, I had to agree to go to St. Louis to understand what they were going to charge me.
So in other words, when you were arrested, they didn't tell you for what you were arrested for?
Not until I got to St. Louis, no.
Yes. So the moment this happens, talk about that.
Well, I'm flying. It was my annual general meeting, and I had been in Asia. I came back to London, held the meeting, and I flew through USA like normal. This time I happened to be going London, Dallas, San Jose. And I'm on British Airways. Coincidentally, I get upgraded to first class because you've got a lot of air miles and I travel a lot. And I'm sitting in first class, and I come off the airplane and they're there. Two FBI agents saying, "Excuse me, Mr. Carruthers, can you please come with us?" And that was it.
So you don't know for what FBI is now rented you. You have a suspicion, I would imagine, that this is related to the business.
No, I knew straight away it was related to the business. You know? I wasn't doing anything else that they might be looking for me for. but like I said, I didn't understand at that point the gravity of the accusation.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So what happens next? You get taken to questioning. You find out what it's all about.
Step by step.
Yes.
So that people understand. Okay. First thing is you don't answer any questions. You ask for a lawyer, then they stop asking you questions, and then you have to go through a judicial process where you need to go to where the venue or the state who's instigating the prosecution. You have to agree to do that, and the local lawyer that I got the next day advised to do that because it would speed up the whole process and we'd have transparency, and then we could decide what to do. And I was fortunate actually because this lawyer was a high-profile lawyer in Texas, and he knew a high-profile successful lawyer in Missouri, and I was able to get the best lawyer in Missouri before anybody else that was in the same indictment got caught and had to find a lawyer. So that was positive. But, you know, overnight stays in county jails, traveling through Oklahoma, the federal prison hub, and eventually going into a county jail in Missouri. It was all new experience to me. You know, I've been in some dodgy hotels, but they are not like hotels, these places. They're different.
So you get taken in by FBI, and that is the last time you experience freedom in the next couple of years? No,
I did about 6 weeks locked up, and then I got out on $1 billion bond and an electronic tag. And when I got out on bond, initially I was not allowed out the premises I was staying. I actually stayed in a hotel in St. Louis for about 6 months before I eventually got an apartment. And progressively, I was allowed more time, so 1 hour a day, and then 2 times 1 hour a day, and then 2 hours and 1 hour, and then 2 hours and 3 hours, 2 hours and 1 hour was the maximum time I was allowed out, unless the judge prescribed a special occasion for me. I was not allowed to travel out of Missouri unless she said so. I was not allowed to work, obviously, and I had to pay for all my expenses and my legal bills, and I was detained on house arrest for a total of 42 months.
How did your family react when this all happened?
I think that they were proud and embarrassed at the same time. They know I'm not a criminal. They were shy. They supported me. My wife used to travel to the USA regularly. The USA stopped her overstaying the 90 days that she has to leave. So she would, and they said that she must stay away for 90 days before she came back. So over these 4 years, she would do 90 days on, 90 days off, 90 days on, 90 days off. Mm-hmm. You know, my children came to see me in St. Louis once when I ran the marathon there for charity. And I tried to make life as normal as possible. When you're in that situation, you're given what they call first stage discovery. So that's the evidence against you for their prosecutorial activity. My evidence bundle was 500,000 documents.
500,000 documents. Oh my God.
Now, the only reason your name is not in these documents is you were not in the industry at that time. But had you been in the industry at that time, your name would have been in that evidence bundle. Because peers of me, who are legends equal to me, were all in that evidence bundle. Everybody.
And so, for context here, then a couple of months earlier, the UEGA was passed in the United States, which is basically the Unlawful Internet Gaming Act. And essentially what happened in the mid-2000s in the US was that internet gambling was becoming very prevalent in the United States. It was difficult to keep it under the radar. And the long arm of the hammer of the United States lawmakers decided to crack down on online gambling. Essentially, were you were there more indictments at that time than you? Or were you kind of the first president?
We were the at a federal level. I believe we were the first president. I recall that the chairman of Sporting Bet, which was a public company also at that time, had an issue, but I think it was at the state level. And the chairman is a gentleman called Peter Dix. Peter Dix was never prosecuted. They came to some arrangement and the charges were dropped. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, again, it all didn't happen in 5 minutes. Remember, I'm sitting on house arrest for nearly 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
But there were a number of actions where individuals reached agreement with the prosecutor not to prosecute them. And the most famous one in the public domain was one of the founders of Party Poker, Anurag Dishi. Anurag Dishi paid $330 million not to get prosecuted. A famous payments provider, net teller, paid $108 million. Did I say Anurag Dishi paid $330 million and net teller paid $108 million not to get prosecuted. My computation, which is a rough calculation, was that the United States government collected in excess of $1 billion for non-prosecutorial agreements based on me being locked up in house arrest in St. Louis.
Wow.
That's a coincidence. Yeah?
They made some good money at that point. Yeah.
Like I said.
And so...
It was literally David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, 500,000 documents. The US... essentially US government against you, and defending this case is pretty much impossible from the start.
That's my assessment now, yeah.
Yeah. So you come to terms with the fact then that fighting this case it's not an option. It's not an option. I'm not fighting this case. I'm fighting for my life. Yes.
And I've killed nobody. I told you, I employed 3,750 people. That's what I did wrong.
Yeah. So of course, after years of house arrest and coming to terms with where this case is heading, you then decide to plead guilty and take a
plea bargain.
A plea bargain.
Yeah, and that was a negotiation because they started with 8 years.
Okay, they started with 8 years.
Yeah.
And you'd start negotiating that. How does that work?
You play poker with them. And basically I said, do you want to do 16-week trial? And the jury's going to love me because I'm going to talk to them nicely. And they didn't want to do the work. That's the bottom line. And I didn't want to go to jail for 80 years. So we reached an agreement on 33 months.
33 months.
And I still negotiated the 33 month because I said I wanted to ensure that the judge had the leeway to give me something less than 33 months if she felt that was appropriate.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, she didn't. But I still had to try. I still had to climb the mountain.
Yeah.
You know, when I went for my sentencing hearing, I think there was 50 people in the audience. 45 of these 50 people in the audience were St. Louis citizens that got to know me got to know David, not the CEO of a public company, got to know David and respected David and loved David. 100% of them were shocked that I actually had to do any time. Never mind just get a reduction on a 33-month. But that's life.
In retrospect, would you have done anything differently during that time?
No, nothing. I did everything I possibly could. I rebuilt myself physically. I engaged myself productively. I worked, although I didn't earn any money. I wasn't working on business. I was working on life and life skills. I was dealing with the trauma of being in the situation I was in. I was preparing for the trauma that I would need to face when I went inside.
Right. So, sprawling business, building an incredible future, an incredible business for yourself, building a team that respects you, and then all of a sudden that is taken away.
Yeah.
You are now instead fighting to have any form of life moving forward, and trying to keep yourself together during this time, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, simple. What I did is I started exercising. I would go to the gym and I'd walk on the treadmill. I lost enough kilos, I started to jog on the treadmill. When I started to jog on the treadmill, I remembered my youth. I was a good athlete, I was a good runner. And one morning I woke up, it was early December sometime, and I said, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to raise some money for charity, and I'm going to show the judge that I'm a nice person in St. Louis. A little bit of strategy, but also the health thing and the change of life thing was important to me. And I remember I spoke to a famous lady in this industry. I spoke to a lady called Sue Schneider.
Yes.
And she was very supportive of me because she lives close by to St. Louis. I called her up. I said, Sue, I'm going to run a marathon. And she says, quote, I hope she doesn't kick me for this, but she said, fuck, David, it's a long way. And I cut a long story short, I ran the marathon. I ran 4 hours and 5 minutes. And the objective was to get round. I got round. And I kept running. And I got faster and stronger and skinnier and more determined. And I released a lot of my mental stress by the exercise that I had to do to get that fit. And to repay Sue Schneider, who supports a charity in Memphis, I asked the judge if I could go to Memphis and run another marathon. And surprisingly, the judge says, yes, you can, but you have to go in the custody of Mrs. Schneider. And she's responsible for you. And she did. And I went and I ran the Memphis Marathon. And in that marathon, I ran 3 hours and 7 minutes.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I remember we spoke about running marathon. Yeah. I'm a marathon runner also. And you asked me what time I got in my marathon when I ran, and I proudly say, 3:30 is my time, and I'm proud of that. And then I say, oh, okay, yeah, I run under 3 hours then eventually, and I'm like, oh my God, David, that's crazy, man. Let's get back to the running in a little bit of time, because now I want to move then to the point where you have pleaded guilty, you get the 33 months, and you step into federal prison in United States.
Yeah.
We've all seen the documentaries. We've all seen how it kind of is portrayed through the TV. And the prison system in the US is not exactly focused on rehabilitation, perhaps, at least from an outside point of view. It seems to be more focused on actual punishment, let's say. But from your perspective, you step into that prison. How is day one?
It was an experience. The first thing is that I had to be driven from St. Louis to West Texas. It took 2 days. A very good friend actually took the time and effort to drive me. We had to steak dinner the night before I show up in the morning. And I had to actually ring the bell to get into the prison. Which is bizarre. It really is bizarre. But anyway, you go through a process that I had experience when I was first arrested. You go through, removal of everything that belongs to you and supplement and given their uniform and all the rest of it. And you're put into an area where you're monitored for a period of time to make sure that you're stable and safe and healthy and everything. And then you go into the community, the prison community. The prison I went to was a village called Eden, which is not lost on my brain, the Garden of Eden, although I'm not a practicing Christian, but I was brought up as a kid as a Christian. And there was, I think, around 1,500 population in this mid-level federal prison. Maybe over 1,000 were Mexican. The rest came from the Caribbean and other Central American, South American countries. I think there was probably less than 5 white people in the prison.
Out of 1,500?
Yeah. 1 Romanian, 1 Palestinian, 1 Canadian, 2 Canadians, actually, and me, from memory.
So difficult to kind of fade into obscurity in there?
Well, I think obscurity is impossible. And I don't know much you know about prison, but I learned very quickly, and I understood that you had to align yourself with a group. That group is usually defined by a geographical location. And I realized quite quickly that I was on my own. I'm Scottish.
Yeah, exactly.
So I became my own gang. I was the boss of my clan, and they called me to Scotia. Now, they knew who I was because of the media coverage. It was quite prolific. And they made 2 errors of judgment, maybe 3 errors of judgment with me. First one was they thought I was a member and connected to the United States Mafia, which is not true, but I didn't deny it, which gave me a substance and some protection. They thought I was a billionaire, which I wasn't, but I didn't deny it. And they thought I was stronger than I really was, physically, because of the way I conducted myself. You have to conduct yourself with decorum and consistency. You have to show people perfectly normal respect. You have to be careful not to, delve into gossip and gambling and silly stuff. Then you're okay. If you do any of these other things, you put yourself at physical risk, without a doubt. And then you learn how things work in prison. Okay, now before I go into, how they steal things and how they sell things to each other or whatever, I went in with a mission. My mission was to do the 33 months as fast as I could. And the way of doing that was occupying myself fully when I'm inside. I did a to-do list every day in prison. I wrote letters till my hand hurt. I helped people generate and renew and create skills to do an interview when they got free, to write a CV, to talk about life, to talk about the economy and different things. I never stopped. I used to go to sleep 9 p.m. tired. I wake up 5 a.m. fresh. That was successful navigation of the process. I kept running in the prison as well.
And what is different in prison than what we would see from the TV through documentaries? Is it well portrayed, would you say? Or
there's very little. I mean, if you see the documentaries, particularly at the county level, yeah, it's like that. It's hell. It's, I had to do a process that was just a normal bureaucratic process because I was moving from the United States to the UK. The judge has to ask me, was it my request and my decision, and did I agree with it? Now, to do that process, I had to visit a county jail, and because of circumstances out of everybody's control due to weather conditions, it took me 7 weeks in county jails to catch up with the judge and then eventually get back to the federal prison. But when you do that, at 4 a.m. they come and collect you, and they put you in a new orange suit, a pair of flip-flops, handcuffs and ankle cuffs, and they put you in a bus and take you to the county jail to wait to see. 7 weeks, no deodorant, no soap, no money. And every other day I'm meeting a new set of people. I have no idea who they are, what they've done, or what they're accused of. That is dangerous. And then you suffer the indignity of being on the bus, the prison bus, going from one place to another place, and they stop to give you your lunch. Lunch, 2 slices of bread, 1 tub of jelly, 1 tub of peanut butter, 1 carton of milk. Not assembled, and they don't take the handcuffs off. Can you do it? Can you? Yeah, it's an experience.
Yeah.
And then I stopped in a place called Lubbock, in West Texas, and that's where I actually saw the judge to ask the question. I got collected in the morning to go to court. I expected to go on the bus to go to court, go underground, go up the elevator into court. No. I got chained up with another 8 Mexicans and marched up the high street with the guys with the Stetson hats and the guns in public. I can't describe to you the humiliation, the anger, the frustration that you feel when you take every step and people are looking at you. Yeah. And I was the lucky one. I'm the one with the education. I'm the one that was running a public company. I'm the one that still got money in the bank. These other people, I understand why they do things wrong. Because of what people do to you.
Did you walk in prison with feeling a sense of always having to guard your back? Did you feel unsafe in that environment? I suppose maybe this changed over time.
I never felt unsafe. And the reason I never felt unsafe is I built my confidence in me. And I used my skills to make friends with people, but the right level of friendship. Not too close, not subservient friendship. I participated in activities without putting myself at risk. I made some amazing friends. I still friends with some people that I met in there. You know, there's a young Palestinian gentleman that keeps in touch with me. There's a huge Mexican Muslim guy that keeps in touch with me, and there was a Romanian guy that was really entrepreneurial that keeps in touch with me. So you can make and sustain relationships, but there'll always be an odd occasion where you really have to be you and stand up for you. And a couple of times that happened to me.
Yeah. Do you have any particular stories from within that space of time?
Well, if you allow me to go back into the running thing, I'll tell you a funny story. The 15th of September is Mexico National Day. And so we got the day off. We weren't allowed to go outside, but we're allowed to spend outside the dormitory inside the prison all day. And they organised barbecue, and we got soft drinks, and the prisoners organised sporting events. And they organised a running race, 1 mile time trial. And it wasn't round a loop, it was a kind of 7-bend track. And you had to go run it twice to make up the mile. And they kept coming to me because they knew I ran every day. Like, are you going to run the race? Are you going to run the race? And I said, no, I'm not going to run the race. Eventually, I said, okay, I'll run the race. So I get my schedule. I'm going to run it 2:20 or around that time. So around 1:15, I go up towards the event to warm up. When I get there, there's bleachers because there's a baseball area there. And all the prisoners are on the bleachers. And the other side of the fence, all the prison management are at the other side of the fence, waiting to watch me run. Now, I knew that all the prisoners were gambling on the outcome of the event. The gun goes off, I start running. It feels like the Olympics, the cheering and yelling and screaming. I think I ran 5:08 for the mile. I don't know if it's exactly a mile or not, but I win by about 16 seconds. So I win a bottle of Gatorade, and they probably exchanged hundreds of dollars with each other.
Brilliant one.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned earlier the kind of economy within the prison and so on. How does that work? How do people gamble in the prison? Where do they actually get these resources from?
There's two ways of doing it. Either the settlement takes place outside the prison, which sometimes is the case for the larger sums of money, and usually they play like sporting games like paddle or whatever, like for the outcome of the winnings, or there will be a sporting event on the TV. You can still gamble online in theory when you're in prison.
Yes.
Yeah, you just make a phone call. But that's what there is an ecosystem inside. So people would steal produce from the kitchen. Usually the people working in the kitchen would take the produce and hide it somewhere in the dining room. And then the people that come to dine would secure the illicit goods about their person and take it into the dormitory environment. And then another set of people would we call them like tienda, a little store. They would walk around and sell it. Now, they couldn't sell it for money because there was no money there, but it was barter. So you could, maybe you'd get a chicken leg that you would cook in the microwave, or you would get some spices, or you would get an onion or something. You could get anything, ideally. I mean, I remember we assembled a special Christmas brunch, and we had scrambled eggs, tortillas, queso fresco that we made in the dormitory, and orange juice. Now, some of it was bought from the commissary, and some of it was stolen from the kitchen and bought from the tienda. And how do you make cheese in prison?
How?
Milk, vitamin C tablet, and a microwave.
Gourmet.
No, it's serious.
Yeah.
I learned to make cheese in the prison. I didn't know how to make cheese before.
Amazing. So people become incredibly industrious in that environment, I imagine, when the mind wants to be active and do things.
It's a replica of society. The only thing that's different is there's no freedom. Now, I don't want to be too sensational, but like if you wanted a girl, you could get a girl.
Oh.
Think about it. The employees are mixed, girls and boys. Mm-hmm. Some of the girls would take money for services.
Oh, well. Amazing. So, okay, let's fast forward a little bit then. So you try to do the best you can within prison. You try to do good, and eventually, then you do eventually get a reduced sentence.
Well, I get the time off for good behaviour, which is an entitlement if you behave yourself. Okay. And in the United Kingdom, you also get an early release on electronic tag as well. It's 105 days early as well. So in the whole thing, I think I did 19 months behind bars of the 33. Mm. But then I did 4 years on house arrest as well.
Yes. And so talk again about the first day of your release. That must have been a strange moment also. I mean, looking, one of my favorite movies ever is Shawshank Redemption, right? I would imagine you've seen that movie too, where the premise of the movie somewhat is that when you're in prison for a long time and you get used to the structure and the day-to-day environment, that it's the world becomes a pretty scary place in a way. But for you, when you eventually get released, how was that? Now you need to rebuild your life and so on.
Before I tell you that of the events that day, I have to tell you this. I never saw Shawshank Redemption or The Green Mile until I was in prison.
Yes.
I saw both movies in the prison.
Incredible movies, both of them.
Absolutely. And can you imagine watching Shawshank Redemption with 1,500 other prisoners who are cheering?
Wow.
No, it's I've watched that movie 10 times now.
Yeah.
Every time I see it on a flight, I watch it.
Do you resonate with it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's quite accurate as well in terms of the behaviour in the prisons and its extremes too. Anyway, that first day, I recall happiness and sadness from the people I were leaving behind. And I feel really guilty about one situation, because normally any possessions you have, you leave there and you distribute them to the other people you're leaving behind. And 2 people wanted my duvet, which was nice, and only one person could get it. And I felt terrible, really did feel bad. My wife came and picked me up. We had maybe a 275-mile drive to home. So we stopped at a very famous restaurant chain. It was called Little Chef. It's no longer in existence in the UK, but I had the classic English breakfast with bacon and eggs and coffee and what have you. And then I had to get home by a specific time because the gentleman was coming to fit the electronic bracelet. And I don't know, the first shower, the TV, the sitting in the lounge, I was very cognizant about not going crazy, not being euphoric, but being calm and just taking things step by step by step.
Because you know that this is just the beginning of something.
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
the end of something. It is the beginning of something new.
And even the beginning hadn't begun, because I was still not free. I'm still on house arrest. I still have a curfew. I still have to behave myself. And I have no idea what people's reactions are going to be. The people that used to work with me, I had lunch with them quite soon after I got out. That was a delight. They were exemplary in their admiration and sympathy, empathy, and all the rest of it, But basically, you have to reinvent yourself, because the baggage that comes with the conviction is not small. Now, you say, oh, wait, you only did betting without a permit. It's not the part that's the baggage, it's the size of the sentence in the United Kingdom. Because, by the way, my criminal record in the United Kingdom paperwork states that I pled guilty to betting without a permit. It doesn't mention RICO conspiracy, by the way. But because the sentence was more than 24 months, it's considered a serious crime. That prohibits me from certain things in the future. I'm not allowed to teach. I'm not allowed to work in an environment where I couldn't be the person at the supermarket taking your money.
So handling money.
I mean, I think if I went and tried that today, maybe I would get the job. I'm not sure. But immediately after, these things were not open to me, And I really had to decide what on earth I'm going to do with myself.
Yeah.
How am I going to reinvent David Carruthers?
Yeah, because, talk about being overqualified for, kind of those positions that you can go into again and restart a career and so on and so forth. So you have those limitations that pull you away from continuing that, let's say, CEO building company journey and the reputational damage of coming out of prison and these things, and then work towards somehow finding a new road to go on. So what did you eventually decide to do?
I went through a process, and first of all, I explored what could be possible within the industry. And I realized that the only way I could re-enter the industry at the same level and at the same environment that it was before is if the UK Gambling Commission would afford me a personal license. So I went and asked for one, which was an interesting experience.
Yeah. What happened?
They rejected me at the written application, and I appealed the rejection. And then I had a hearing, and I spoke to them about the hearing, and they were very professional at the hearing, and they spoke to me informally. And what was absent from my hearing narration was exactly what I was going to do. So I didn't have a startup business aligned. I didn't have a job offer from William Hill or wherever. I just wanted to find out where the boundaries were, what was possible. And they said to me that, look, if you have a job offer from William Hill, and they used William Hill, we will give you a license, because you will have group responsibility. If you want to start your own business and be the CEO and the only person in control, we will not give you a license. And they asked me what I wanted to do. And I asked for 24 hours to think about it. And I accepted their offer to withdraw my application, so I did not have a rejection on the record, so that I could go back in the future. But I've never been back.
So what did you eventually decide to do instead?
I took up an opportunity with a Asian friend of mine that used to live in the UK that had repatriated back to Asia, and try and create and build a business that his son would take over once he finished university. And don't laugh, but it was a fashion business. So we started a fashion business. I bought product at London Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week, built an office in Guangzhou, opened 7 stores across China, signed a marketing rights deal for a fancy shoe designer and had 7,000 pairs of shoes made in Guangdong that were retailing for $350 to $700 in a course of 18 months, 2 years.
Yes.
It was fantastic. It was amazing. It taught me different skills. It reinforced my self-belief. It transformed me. And I got to explore mainland China. I've been to more cities that can shake a stick at.
Yeah, what year is this?
Probably started 2013, 2014, finished in 2015.
Okay. So this is, the explosive growth of China, exciting. Even you could do that today and you still make money. The problem with the business model is we did not avail ourselves of the product distribution channels that we should have done. We were too mindful of the designers' desires not to go onto these platforms because they wanted to be exclusive and proper and what have you. But in today's modern world with fast fashion, you can't compete. You really can't. So we stopped the business. And then I go, what am I going to do? So once again,
I had to think again. And my friends actually came and helped me. And they gave me a project inside the industry to do some forensic analysis of a performing live dealer studio in Manila. And I earned 50K for that project. I did 3 weeks work, and I took the 50K and I went to Taiwan, and I lived in Taiwan for 3 years, went to university, learned to speak Mandarin, started a teaching business where I taught entrepreneurial skills and cooking, and from the cooking school I opened a private restaurant.
So very quickly, from fashion into, again, online gambling, into cooking.
Yeah.
Into restaurant business and
I had a bit. I think you can find the Instagram page and Facebook page, but David's Kitchen Taipei is me.
Brilliant. And so you run the restaurant for some time, but then
about 6 months. About 6 months. I was fully booked for 1 or 2, maybe even 3 months in advance. I ran a 7-course tasting menu that travelled the length of the Orient Express, different dishes for every country along the way. I only took a maximum of 6 guests, but 2 people could come, have the whole restaurant. And I would cook and serve and talk. It was amazing. I was working very hard. I loved it. It was fantastic. And then out of the blue, totally out of the blue, somebody from 24 years ago called me up and says, please come and see me. And he said, look, I'm associated with a group of investors and we want to make investments outside of Asia into the gaming business, and we need someone like you.
And this is where we are today.
Yep, that's where I am today. 7 years ago, nearly 7 years ago. This is year 7.
Yes. So today, then you run your consultancy business, essentially trying to locate investment opportunities for the clients that you work for.
Yeah, and advise them on strategy. They are not unsubstantive. They are very substantive people and very successful.
So the loop has been closed to some extent.
No, absolutely. I am elated to be again, significant in the industry, participating in the industry, in the right forum, in the legal white market forum, and globally recognized for my achievements. I showed up at the airport in Barcelona the other night, and there was a few people that recognized me and knew who I was in the line waiting to board. And I had a priority boarding thing because I'm old. And they were joking with me and cheering and blah, 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 because I got to go in front of them. And the lady that sat next to me on the airplane said, "Who are you? How do all these people know you?"
So, kind of summarizing the story now in retrospect, what is the big learning from the whole journey that you've been on so far to date?
Never give up. Never, ever, ever give up. Do what you want to do. Do it the best you can. Learn from everything you do, but never give up.
And so, you know, being at the highest of the high, on the top of the mountain, then to the bottom of the sea, and being spat out the other side, reinventing yourself, and just keep going.
I'm still reinventing myself. You know, and I will be doing it till my last breath. It's just natural for me. And it's not special. It's just human characteristics. Everybody is capable of being David Carruthers. Many, many people are capable of being much more than David Carruthers. But David Carruthers, for me, is not insubstantive. And I'm very proud of it.
Mm-hmm. And what advice would you give to up-and-coming professionals, especially within our industry, that might be excited and ambitious to reach great heights?
It's the learning cycle, you know, like decide what you want to do it, evaluate it, learn from it, improve the next time. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. And so you've been with the industry since its very infancy. You've seen the changes and the ups and the downs that the industry have had. Where do you think the industry is heading now? Are you happy where the industry is today? Is there any trends that you're paying attention to right now? What's your kind of analysis of the industry today and where it's heading?
I think the important dynamics today are sensible regulation. I think the regulatory environment continues to evolve and needs to evolve. I think in some areas it needs to become less rigorous, less judgmental and more facilitative. I expect that over a course of 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, it will homogenize and harmonize globally. That's a long way away, but it is happening. You will still get the places that do not want access to this industry, and I think the industry needs to mature and understand and leave these places alone and concentrate on where it is permissible with a degree of protection for them, their investment and their businesses. The most important thing in the industry operationally is to continue to develop appropriate, sensible, innovative, exciting product. Mm-hmm. And that includes the use of AI.
Yeah, exciting times ahead for sure. And David, also just from your experience from, again, seeing the ups and the downs, running successful businesses, but also struggling at times with the business, with profit warnings, as you mentioned. Yeah. You've been the kind of leader of a small company that became a big company. What does it take to be a leader, would you say, in a business context from all the sides? You know, as you said, you've been running both a small business, big business, successful, unsuccessful. Is there any red thread, any particular character trait that you would say and point out to a great leader running a great business?
Well, the biggest fundamental in any leader is communication. And normally that's oral communication. Whether it's 1-to-1 or 1-to-100 or 1-to-3,000, it doesn't really matter. But underlying that communication is attention to detail and observation. You have to observe people at an individual level and at the appropriate time recognize that, because that is supremely powerful. You don't realize it, how powerful it is. I mean, 3 years ago, roughly, maybe 4 years ago. When Ice London was in May, because it was later because of COVID, I was in London for Ice. After Ice finished on a Saturday, I'm sitting with my son outside a bar on the River Thames. A lady walks up to me and hugs me. I turn around and I see who she is. She was the lady on the front desk of my office in San Pedro in San Jose, Costa Rica. And she had been attending Ice. I cried with happiness and humility, because she respected me. She didn't forget me. She knew I was not a bad person. They went through trauma when I was arrested. But she's happy, she's still employed, and she's still in the industry, not with the former owner of BetonSports or anything, but that was delightful to see.
Mm-hmm. And can you speak to as well, in the 2000s, there were a set of characters, let's say, within the industry that, again, became, let's say, the giants that we are standing on the shoulders of today. Some more prominent and others more colorful than others, shall we say. Can you talk a little bit about the other characters, let's say, that you met along the way, the other David Carruthers of the time?
Look, I'll say some things, but what I don't want to do is miss somebody out. You know, there's so many. You know, I knew Pontus Lindwell, for example. I spoke with him on the stage, like after him or before him, I can't quite remember, in Vegas at an investor conference. I knew Mark Blandford before any of the two of us got famous. He had 2 betting shops in Malvern in England, and my area office was in Malvern in England, for example. You know, I met Ruth Parasol in Canada. She was begging me to put BetonSports into her poker environment, and we chose not to. I think that was a mistake, but we chose not to because we were scared of customer cannibalization. And there are other people that I don't quite remember some of their names. There's a famous German guy that did Bwin, but he got trouble in France, not in the United States.
Yeah, I can't remember the name now on the top of my head either, but it was also a legal case.
We were all friendly with each other. We were competitors, but we were all pioneers. We were all pushing things forward. And then there are other people that are icons in the dark industry, and the names are not the real names. I knew as well, and they knew me. I mean, I was the vice chairman of the Gaming Association in Costa Rica that Eduardo Agami started. Now, I can mention his name because unfortunately he's passed now. He's gone. But we did that. It was the infancy of pushing things forward, of getting regulation, about being legitimate, about being safe and secure in Costa Rica and all the rest of it. You know?
Yeah. And coming up on the final 2 questions here today, I asked you before, in retrospect, if you would have done anything differently during the legal case itself, but if you look back on your journey as a whole, in retrospect, would you have done anything differently from that context, from a career context now looking back, including prison time and all of that?
With the benefit of hindsight, I would have left Ladbrokes earlier, but that's theoretical.
Right.
But if things went exactly the same way and I was offered a job at BetonSports, I would take it.
Yeah.
For sure. And I would be the Coca-Cola of online gambling.
Final question for you here today, David. What is your ambition today? You say you're 67 years young. You have a sprawling career ahead of you. What will David be doing in a couple of years' time from now?
I'll be thinking about what my objectives are for the next 12 months, and I'll be doing everything I can to make sure that I achieve them. Now, my objective in 2025 is one word: Africa.
That's the next frontier?
That's my next frontier. So if you know anything about Africa, you contact me.
That's a great way to summarize the podcast. I think, David, when we have you back in a couple of times, we can zoom in on that very topic. But for now, I just want to thank you again for sharing this incredible story. Like I said, there's a couple of pioneers in this industry. You are certainly one of them. You experienced the industry from all perspectives. You've gone full circle and you come out of it in the best possible way, I would say. So just thank you for sharing your story, David. I hope as many newcomers of the industry will take this in, because the history of the industry is important to remember. It's important to know where the industry come from in order to build a future.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
You're very welcome. I've enjoyed talking to you, as always. Thank you.
As always, David. Thank you so much.